Hi, welcome to another episode of Taking Back Humanity. In today's episode, I'm going to dive deep into my travel origin story, why it matters, and what is possible for you. So, I want to tell you a quick story. When we first spawned the idea of a world trip, it was just shortly after our trip to Japan. Japan really opened our eyes to a lot of different cultural norms, and it was just kind of a wild experience to go to somewhere that was so completely different than here. The next year after that, on April Fool's Day, my wife Brianna decided to play a little prank on her friends. And that was to tell everyone that we were going to live in Japan for a year because she had been accepted to the JET program, which is a English teaching program in Japan. It's very well known. And some people believed her, some people didn't. Most were really happy for her, but her sister was on to her and knew that there was no way in heck that she actually did that. The next day after that, over a glass of wine, because that's where all the best ideas happen, we really thought, what's stopping us from traveling the world? Why are we just holding back? What's getting in our way? We see all these other people that are doing it, people that are our age, and a lot of younger people are doing it. So what's stopping us from doing it? And it's a dream I've always had since I was a kid. I always thought that, it'd be amazing to travel the world but, I probably need like $1 million or something to do that because it's really expensive. That's my child brain thinking that. Then the next year after that, so we were started taking international trips after that Japan trip because we wanted to keep going before we took our big trip. But yeah, we had decided on that day that we're like, let's put things into motion. Let's get this going. So we started saving up money and taking those trips, like I was just saying. So the next year, we had a little bit of fun with our friends on April Fool's Day. We let them know that we are going to take this trip around the world, actually, and not just to Japan. And it's going to happen in 2019. So a lot of people are like, oh, you said something like this last year. We don't believe you. And some people were like, oh, yeah, I'm so excited for you. You should go here, here, and here, here. Because we did ask them, like, hey, where should we go? And so we got a lot of feedback, like all these different countries that people recommended to us, and it was pretty awesome. But the next day, the joke was on them. And people know this now that April 2nd is a day when all the truth comes out, but not in the way that they thought. We were actually doing it. We let them know, hey, it wasn't a joke. We had our fun with you, but we are actually making this happen. So that's basically what spawned us to go on a 9-month trip around the world in 2019. That trip was supposed to be 14 months. However, a little thing got in the way of March 2020, and I think you know what that is. We were 2 days away from going to Antarctica, and it was canceled, and we had to go home. And that really sucked, honestly. I do want to say that despite all of that, I believe this is something that's possible for many of you. And I know that travel is a privilege and it's not something that everybody can do. And a lot of people are stuck in really bad situations. But I also know of people that manage to do this on nearly nothing. So I think it is possible if you really can set your foot forward and create a plan and make it happen. Why does traveling around the world even matter? I believe that by getting yourself out there and leaving your home country, seeing how other people live their lives, really opens your mind to different possibilities. And I found that even just going to Japan, I was just so impressed with all the technology that was there. Their train systems were phenomenal. It wasn't a car-based society as much as it is here. Of course, they got to move a lot more people around in a lot smaller spaces than we do. But at the same time, I just loved being able to get on a train and just like, boom, just get to wherever I needed to be in Tokyo. We did not need a vehicle at all in Japan. I never even dreamed of it. In fact, the only other method of transportation there was by bicycle. And that's only because our Airbnb host in Kyoto happened to have some bikes that we could use, which is really cool because that way we can just ride our bikes around, go to all the shrines and everything that are nearby, and just ride the bike. Otherwise, we just hop on the train and go wherever we wanted to. I loved it. But I mean, just getting out there, we went to Africa was our first stop on this trip around the world. We flew all the way from Oregon to Cape Town, which is pretty ridiculous flight there, or three flights to get there. We had to fly to San Francisco and then all the way over to Istanbul from San Francisco. Imagine that. Did an overnight layover and then got on the next flight and headed to Cape Town. So, I mean, we started down there. We spent a couple weeks there. Unfortunately, we did end up losing our camera gear while we were there, not because we lost it, but because we left it in the car when we probably should have brought it with us when we went out for lunch on after a hike up Table Mountain. Obviously, we were targets because, I mean, we're in a rental car and it seems pretty obvious that we're not locals. So they signal jammed the vehicle and got the bags while we were eating and came back and found that they were gone. They were in the trunk, and so that is that. We almost decided to go home at that point, which really would have sucked because, I mean, we flew all the way down there. We're like, you know what? No, we're going to continue on. We were smart enough to insure all of that gear, and we were able to repurchase most of it while we were there and then go on to Namibia where we had a fantastic time. It was 3 weeks. We had a rental truck that had, you get the tent on top and you got all of the supplies inside. We went out a little table and chairs and just went around and did various camping in different spots and Etosha National Park where all the wildlife is. We saw herds of elephants each night. We had what we called our evening TV because we'd go out and take pictures of a lot of different animals throughout the day. And then when we got back, because you had to be back before sunset, and it was winter down there at the time, summer for us up here. And so the gate was closed at 6 o'clock each night. So then after that, we'd come back, we'd have some dinner, we'd go over to this watering hole, sit up in all these chairs on this viewing platform, and all the animals were coming in down below. And it was just one of those incredible experiences that, I mean, it's definitely one of those once in a lifetime experiences, unless you want to go back. But I loved that. I loved climbing the sand dunes and seeing all this nature and all these different animals I've never seen in my life before. And just having that experience. And sure, the roads were a little bumpy there and we're just kind of like a lot of the time, but it was just such a fantastic experience. And the night sky there, because there isn't any light pollution really, you could see just everything. And the southern sky, I mean, it's not something I've ever seen before. I mean, I saw the Southern Cross barely from Hawaii, but to have it just right over your head is just such a cool thing to see a different set of stars than what I'm used to. So after that, I mean, we went up to Europe. We went all the way through. We flew straight to Germany from Namibia. They have a really good direct connection there. And then just explored a lot of Western Europe and then Eastern Europe, which I feel like is my home. I just felt the culture there was great. The connections were great. I loved all these cute little cities that we were staying in. Croatia was amazing. Dubrovnik, Split, you name it. The whole coast there, all the little cities. We had so much fun. But it was really about the meaning part is when we were connecting with locals and really getting those experiences that no tourists would ever have because they know all of these really cool places to go. And we even explored a bombed out hotel, which was really interesting. Just seeing that destruction from a war that happened, gosh, it was probably 33 years ago now, the War of Independence in 1991. But we went up there and this local, there was still glass in the bar, so she always collected all these different glasses that were in the bar. And then she did something called basically just throwing glass, and we were just like throwing glass at the wall and just letting out all of our grievances, so to speak. I didn't really have too many myself, but she was going like, "This dictator did this, blah blah blah." It was just like all this crazy, crazy stuff, and it was just so incredible just to have that experience. But that was not the only one. It was like we were meeting people all over the place that had various experiences and generosity. Holy cow! I mean, like there was this one couple that let us stay in their place for 2 weeks. And it wasn't even like a couch surfing thing, it was through Servos, which is basically somewhat similar to couch surfing, but call it like the grandfather of it because it was something that happened right after World War II. It was basically a program that was out there to help with cultural exchange and just getting a better understanding of different cultures. But the rule about Servos is that you only have either, they say no more than 2 nights, essentially. no more, no less. But these guys were like, you guys are cool. If you want to hang out for a couple weeks, you're welcome to. So in the Netherlands, we were able to have that experience and just they'd show us around and we'd try a lot of the different foods and such there. And then also on our own, just go out and travel. And I like to just walk around in places and just, get a feel for everything around me and have those senses, the smells and everything else and meet other people. But then there was another situation in Belgium where this was a couch surfing thing. So I found a couch surf, but he was only able to host us for one night. So what did he do? He's like, well, you know what? I know this other person that might really be interested in having you over to their house. And he arranged for us to go stay with them. And that was just so cool because we just got to stay a little bit longer there and really, again, just, get some of that local culture and exchange all of our travel stories with them. And it was just a lot of fun. And while we were there, we even helped them set up their profile on couch surfing so that way they could join the program and host other people from around the world. And we were even doing that before we left. We were like hosting lots of different people from many different places before we even took this trip. But this is our like, I mean, that actually shows some credibility. Like, hey, if you're willing to host people, we might be more inclined to host you. So say definitely do that if you do plan on using that program. But that is one of the free travel tips that I have for you guys. I mean, you can do couch surfing, but that's just one option of many. Also, Airbnbs are pretty cheap in Europe, so you can get away with that quite a bit too. Moving on, more on the meaning side, we also had an amazing host that was down in Chile. And we went down to Santiago and they were living in a pretty poor neighborhood. I mean, some of the buildings were part shack, in my opinion, with just like metal, sheet metal. And so was their place. But this guy that was probably around, I'd say about 20, 22 years old, something around that. He was living there with his family. So a lot of them will live as an entire family because that's what they could afford in some of those spots, especially in the poorer parts of town. But anyway, he gave up his bedroom and his bed. So it was only a twin size bed. And me and my wife Brianna were there and sharing this small bed. But the thing was, it wasn't really about, I didn't really care that I had a small bed. I was just happy to be there because for one, just getting to know their family. I mean, none of them spoke English except for him. So we had to speak our limited amount of Spanish. Of course, we were told later that was Mexican Spanish, but that makes sense because I understand in different places like Chile and Spain, it's going to be different Spanish than what we're getting taught up here in the United States. But anyway, what was so cool is just the generosity of them not only giving up that bed, but also we got the experience of watching his mother with her craft her livelihood of making humitas, which are kind of like tamales, but they're more of a corn-based, masa-based food. We got to take part in it and just I took some video of it and everything because I had to get that experience documented to an extent. But it was just such a cool thing. And it's like if you travel to Chile, I mean, you're probably not going to get that experience. And so I like to go deep and get deep into the culture and just really immerse myself in everything around me and sure, yeah, I'm going to take some videos and take some pictures here and there, but I'm not going to make that the only thing I'm doing. I mean, I see a lot of people that their main purpose is that, and that's okay with them. I don't really judge them for that, but I also would really like to see people just go a little deeper with their travels and not just hit the touristy sites, get that Instagram photo of the Eiffel Tower behind you, and actually really, really connect with people around you. I mean, I even do that in the US too. So it's not just outside of the country. I mean, I try and meet locals wherever I go. So what's possible for you? So I think that to take one of these trips, yeah, it takes a commitment, but honestly, there are ways to do it very inexpensively. I know a couple right now that's out there, and they've been out there for 6 years. I don't know how they do it, but they've been traveling together as a couple for 6 years, and they travel on less than $50 a day. So if I think about $50 a day, so that's like maybe what, $1,500 per month? And they're living off of that by traveling. That is less than most people pay for rent. So even if you could get a remote job or even do some freelancing work, and each of you, if you're a couple, does that, you're doing just fine. And you're able to go travel and see whatever you want to see pretty much. I mean, for me, even in Switzerland, which is supposed to be a really expensive country, I was in Basel for 2 weeks and we had our lodging covered completely. We grocery shopped in Germany, since it's on the border of Germany and France, that city is, and we went to both. Actually, we walked into France. There's no like official border there because they're all in one same zone in the Shenzhen zone. So you can just walk into the next country there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, with the grocery shopping, with that, I mean, we didn't eat out a whole lot. We did eat out a little bit. We barely paid anything for those couple weeks in Switzerland. It is possible. I think the most expensive barrier will be flights. However, I know a lot of ways that you can save on that or even get them for free. The other part was lodging. And in 6 months of Europe, 4.5 months of it was free. And it wasn't always staying with other people. We had a lot of homes to ourselves and we didn't pay a dime for them. So those two big things are covered. So then all you got to think about are your activities, whatever you're going to do in these places, your transportation locally, your transportation between countries, which often for us was a bus. And Flixbus is very cheap in Europe as long as you book a little bit in advance. We were going into different countries for about €5 a person. Do you want to live in the United States and just travel around the US? That's expensive. Transportation's expensive. Food's expensive. Lodging is expensive. I loved being in Europe. It was just so easy to get around. Their transportation system there is stellar. I think we're so far behind in a lot of ways. So that is our episode. I hope that you got a lot of value out of that. And I really encourage you to get out there and explore. And if you are interested in working with me, I will have a link in the show notes where you can reach out and get a coaching session with me. And I will give you a discount as long as you tell me that you actually listen to this podcast till the end. I will blow your mind. I will see you in the next episode.